wife, Pam Wycoff, and we couldn't be happier to be here. And we watched a lot of what you guys have had going on last night. There was something when we walked in, and you guys were talking about some type of technology and evidence in debate, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea what was happening with all of that, but it's amazing to watch so many people with their head down on their computer, and it seemed as though that you were following along, and I thought, what smart people. That would not be the session that I would have been at. How many of you are in turf oratory coaches? How many of you are debate coaches? How many of you do it all? Okay, that's really, I think, a really pretty good cross-section. I want to get us off to a really nice, informal, emotional start, so I'll just ask a question. Is Kansas a Democrat state? I think the answer is no. Is that right? This is a very important you know, one of the things that when Pam was responding to back here about for prose and poetry, it's so interesting to come to Kansas and hear what you guys are talking about, because I coached in Indiana at Chesterton High School for 31 years, and then I moved to Minnesota primarily because Pam had chased me all around the country.
He loves to tell that tale. That's not true.
And so I pretty much had to move there because she wanted me to get married, primarily because she wanted another speech coach. That's the primary reason. So I spent 15 years in Minnesota before I retired in 2013. Pam retired at the same time. But you know what? At the Indiana speech and debate conference that we had, or the Minnesota conference that she primarily goes to, we talk about the same things that you guys are talking about now. And one of the comments that was made, I don't know everybody's name, but what's your name?
Aaron Deckett.
Aaron. How many of you know Aaron? How many of you like Aaron? Some people, the jury, Aaron, is still out. That's okay. But he made the comment, and this isn't on our agenda, that I really liked, and that is that what you really can't stand when it comes to the rules, there's the big picture, what the rule's supposed to do, why it's there. The people who can't wait to get you. And it's not because the rule's right. I mean, it's not because what they're saying is right. It's a technicality that somebody wants to talk about. It has nothing to do with the good of the activity. It has nothing to do with the kid. There's some other agenda going on, and that's the time when I think someone in charge needs to call it like it is. And so those nitpicky kind of things where we can get so far away from what's the big picture? What are we really after doing? And is this something that is really helping the kid and promoting education, or is this something really, there's another agenda and it's getting in the way? So the fact that you guys talk about that, I really appreciated that. Now, what's the last session you have for today?
This one.
We are it, right?
Does lunch count as a session?
What's after this?
Business luncheon.
Then there's the luncheon. That should be, I hear it's a pasta bar. How many of you are on a diet? Pam, you're on a diet?
Well, yeah, always.
This is an important conference. There was another conference that was also important between a superintendent and a school principal and a teacher. And the conference was so important that God came down to listen. And so the superintendent was talking, and he said, you know, what I really would like is for all of my schools to have enough technology so that every kid can take a computer home and they can be savvy with technology. But then he started to cry because he knew that would never happen in his lifetime. And then the principal started to talk, and she said, you know, I just wish that we had numbers of courses in the electives, because with everything happening with state testing and in the core classes of math and English and so forth, many of those elective classes are going away. And so I just wish that we would have more of a well-rounded kid. But then she started to cry because she knew that that would never happen in her lifetime. And then the teacher said, I'd just like to have a state word. And then God started to cry because he knew that would never happen in his lifetime. How many of you school has started? Have you guys been in school a week? 3 weeks. See, in Minnesota, we can't start until after
Labor Day.
because of.
Because the northern tourist economy with the boundary waters and all the lakes, land of 10,000 lakes, they want to be sure that everybody has their last weekend of summer. So teachers go back to last workshop, so I was back last week, but the kids showed up on Monday, or Tuesday. We don't have classes.
It's a state
Yeah.
fair.
I was gonna say.
You can't start in Minnesota until after the state fair is over. And so we couldn't start until it was September 2nd or something. So you're back at school now and things are going. But you guys you've been in school for like 3 weeks or something. And when does the debate season start?
September 20th.
When do you do speech? So you have it divided, right? Now that's the way Minnesota is.
Yeah, we're the
Minnesota
same.
has debate, and then they have speech. When I was in Indiana, we did them both all year long. And I think there are advantages, maybe for both particular systems. But this is the point, that it doesn't really matter what your season, how long it is. To really be competitive, you've got to work all year round. If you're coaching speech and debate, you're doing stuff all year round. And some of the stuff talked about last night about different priorities and so forth, I think that's totally true. And so one of the things that we want to do for today is this. We come to you as teachers. How many of you are teachers? I was an administrator. I apologize. I was an administrator for 12 years. And the one thing that I missed doing administration was that I was no longer around kids. Everything that I did was involved with something maybe relating to, but I didn't really know people's names. And I realized after a point that I should have been the poster child for the Peter principle. Because everything I was no good at, I was in charge of. And everything I loved, I had nothing to do with. And so I thought you need to make some type of a change coming up here. You guys came to this conference and you're at this workshop now for the time that we have for a reason. If I ask you, what are you here for? You should have an answer, right? Right now at your tables, because you're going to be involved with this work today, would you tell each other, what are you here for and what do you want answered about each other? Joe.
I would want to figure out better ways to help our kids understand the process instead of just pretending, actually getting into and understanding these characters. And I also want to find a better way to help them be more self-reliant and choosing pieces and stuff like that.
I can hear it to all around, and then I see that just how to get better. And just specifically, I'll help just any.
Okay, you ready? Give me some responses. Give me some responses. My wife is very politically correct. I am not politically correct. So you ask your question and give a comment, and one of us will probably answer. Okay? But if we don't get to it right now, hopefully we get to it later, either at lunch or after lunch, whenever we can see you. Because now, do you see this packet that you've got? Who do you think made that packet?
Pam.
Joe or Pam?
Pam.
That would be Pam's packet. Round of applause for Pam for putting that together. So if you ask something, I may say, it's in the packet. And if you say, where? I don't know. You gotta look for it. That's your job. Okay, give me a question, a comment, something about interpretation. What was the question you had at your table?
Basically, how to help my students be more self-reliant when going out and finding pieces and cutting them, rather than relying on me to just give them stuff that I've done or the stuff that's been used in the past. like really helping them get into the literature, understand the characters, and then finding ways to cut it without me having to baby them through the preliminary process.
Yeah, okay, yeah. People say that about speech being fun. Is the activity fun? Well, I'm going to admit to you right now, for me, winning is fun. I like it when we win. Now, let me explain what that means. Winning to me means when you make them take it. You don't have to necessarily win, come out in first place, but you make the opposition beat you because you have done absolutely your best. And if you do that and they beat the best that you have, then obviously you have won, in our opinion. That for me is a good time. For kids or coaches, what really I think gives you the confidence is knowing that you're competent. And so often kids and coaches don't really know, am I competent? Am I any good? Which is part of what we're going to talk on for today. Giving you steps so that you can say, you know what, I see that. It makes sense. And I think that I can do that. And when you begin to have that feeling, and your kids also, that's when they start having the nerve and the confidence to say, I think that I can do this on my own, or at least get started. All right? What else? Give me another question. What came up at your tables?
How to steer a kid away from a piece that doesn't fit them
How to steer a kid away?
in time to still fit them into the event. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why they call you coach. And there are kids, they have a particular bent and they're strong at certain things and not strong at maybe other things, and that's when you have to be able to say, I don't really think that that's where you belong. So sometimes we have to say, as coaches, this is an area that you should go in. How many of you, with the kids you have in speech in particular, you have maybe not an audition time, but you have a time when everybody comes through and does something, when they show you something that you may have prepared? How many of you do that? And then don't you go through by every kid and mark down possible events that you think, yeah, I think that a mistake is when we might say, you know, this is speech, here are all the events. What do you think you would like? Because sometimes that does not match up necessarily to what their skill set might be. Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments? Then we're going to go ahead and start. Pam?
All right, well, I'm kind of glad about the first two questions that came up, because I think the approach we're trying to take for the goals for today, the way we set this up, was with that in mind, to really empower you. So what we're trying to give you today are what we would call user-friendly materials. In the packet, we are not going to read that packet through word for word. Part of it is a little bit like they came out with the paperless evidence workshop yesterday, that we're going to put a little bit more down for you. But there's a lot of worksheets and exercises in there to empower kids to be able to do the work, not just you. I thought that was an interesting comment in debate also yesterday about learning to work with the kid rather than to work for the kid. And so you want to be able to be a team, but you don't want all the front loading to happen on you. So I think we're going to give you some user-friendly materials. They are what we would call in the trenches. They are what we have developed from our own experience. And they always came out of a need. And let's face it, time is a premium for all of us. And we have to have things that will empower kids to make choices on their own, guided choices that are smart. And we found that if we front load it with the information in advance, they have a better chance of making really good choices. So,
Okay, can I make a
yeah.
comment? I coached for 41 years, and Pam coached for 34 years. She's still mentoring the program at Apple Valley, but I hung everything up after 46 years of being in education. Folks, how many of you teach all day? We taught, she still does,
Yeah.
all day. So when I talk to you or she is about in the trenches, we've been there. We understand what you're going through, and the fact that we did not have classes where I'm teaching speech all day. There are some schools that have that, where they have forensics. You guys call that speech, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, for us, forensics was both. But there were not speech classes. There were not debate classes. You know, we would teach English all day, and then when do you do speech and debate?
After school.
After school. right? And so that's what your evenings are. So when Pam says that this is something where it's in the trenches and it's tested techniques, it's because we didn't really have any other way to do it. Something was broken, and we needed to try to find a way to fix it. And I think that was our world and your world too. And so we're gonna try to address some of that today.
Because even if you have classes, we've never had like, forensic class. It's always been, we might have a required speech dynamics public speaking class, but those aren't the kids that are necessarily on the team. They're a great place to recruit kids from, but we didn't work on forensics. So this is after the school stuff, and obviously when you are limited to after school only, you've got to have something in your arsenal to make that work. So the third thing that we are giving you today are what we would call activity-based. I'm going to point out the activities. We won't go through all of them, but there are handouts, worksheets, listed activities in the packet. And then we want to offer you a process that we believe gives you, in Interp, and frankly in all speech events, the ultimate compliment. And my husband really, as he redefined winning for you, he's very good at redefining concepts. And if you ask a student generally, what's the ultimate compliment, they would probably say like, good job, or you were great, or I really loved your piece. And in our program, the ultimate compliment is, I believe you. Meaning that what you shared with us, you shared a truth with us, you shared your piece with us, you shared your message with us, and I believe your message, I believe what you have to say. It may not be picture perfect, it may not be completely polished, it's always a work in progress, it's an art form, it's a work in progress. You think about an art class, you can start that pottery and you keep molding it and molding it and molding it and molding it until it becomes an artwork by the end. The ultimate compliment is, I believe you.
Okay, I keep jumping up, but that's okay. That's the way I am. There are two things, I don't care whether we're talking about kids in speech or a skill that we would have in life. There is the micro and the macro. You don't do lessons in speech just for the micro. There has to be a macro transfer, because why? We're teachers. There has to be a lesson that would transfer. And so if I'm working with a kid in speech, I start from the very beginning, and so does Pam. There are two things that are critical for you in speech presentation. I don't care whether it's interpersonal, whether it's at home with your teachers, social gathering, applying for a job, or doing some type of an interview for a job or a scholarship. I have to like you, and I have to believe you. I need to like you. There has to be a dynamic to you where, what a nice kid. What a nice kid. And next of all, I don't know that everything that that kid said was necessarily profound, but I believe that she believed. If I get, I believe you, and also I like you, you are on the way to success. And so whenever we talk with you about things like the chart, something that I put together to try to itemize and in a clinical manner, try to teach the skills of Interp, or if I'm talking to you about terms like commitments or beating the word, those are technical terms. But overall, folks, there are some kids, they defy everything I'll show you up here, and they're gonna score well. And the reason is because individually, I like that kid. That kid is really honest. And so often, I mean, yesterday there was a question or a comment made about if you could change one thing, what was that? That was in the retirement thing. If you could change one thing, what would it be, right? If I could change one thing right now for some of that, I don't want to be the guy who's retired who's now complaining about everything, but it really is something where I don't know that I always see honesty in presentations. I see a lot of other things happening, but I don't know that I believe them. I know that they watched the videotapes, we've watched the videotapes and we've taken things apart, which is a smart thing to do. But I want to say, I don't get your heart. If I get your head, that's one thing. But if I don't get your heart, then there's something missing. And that's not a speech skill, that's a life skill that we need to be able to transfer on to our kids. And a lesson that we teach is this. If we're working with you in speech, some aspect of speech, oral communication, and you can win the round, but you lose the interview, If you can win the round, but you don't have any friends, we've screwed up someplace. Because our obligation as teachers is we have to do a cumulative job of doing it all. And so if the reason you do the whole thing with speech is to get the job. The reason that you do the whole thing with speech is so that you can get the scholarship. And you know how to operate in a social situation. And so that's all transferable. So don't forget that micro, macro idea. And I know that I'm teaching it, but what's the point? There has to be a point to it. Don't you have so many kids in classes, they hate classes because they don't know why they're doing them? They don't do lessons because I don't know why I'm doing them. That's because someone hasn't taught them that. Someone hasn't shown them the applicability of here's why you do that and then apply it. Speech coaches, you've got the same obligation as the educator in class. Why? Because we're good teachers. That's where it all starts.
And with that, the phrase that we use, which was also one that he developed, is the real final round. That every time you speak, you are giving that performance for that audience, but that performance is designed to get you the real final round, which is that job interview, which is that scholarship. And I'll tell you, some of the most heartwarming letters we have ever gotten are the kids that go off to college, and we get a letter and they'll say, Mrs. Wycoff or Mr. Wycoff, I just had a final round. You know, I got picked for this, I got picked for that, it's because I did it. And to me, that gives so much meaning to what we're doing. So it doesn't matter whether it's an interp or oratory, extemp, or debate, and we heard that yesterday about it changing kids' lives. But for our kids, we have found that when you put it in that macro context, everything you do becomes much more important. It's not about winning that round, it's about winning the big rounds that matter in life. So, let's see here. There we go. So we're going to start now with talking a little bit about the kid and the cutting, and this is where the packet starts with coordinating the kid and the cutting. Now the cutting, I use that just because of alliteration. Really the selection is what we're talking about. But these are the things that I think will help you in making good material choices. I do think the student has to like and care about the piece. Now, with that said, I don't think the student should have that sort of princess and the pea need to find the perfect piece, and especially the younger they are, the more they need to roll with the punches a little bit, and they have to think about what they're doing, and you have to feel like you're meeting their needs. But they do need to like and care about it, and sometimes that is a discussion about what's the meaning and what are you going to get to do every time you do it. Not just, it's funny, it's serious, but what's the message you're going to get to share with that. Also, in terms of it, think a little bit about the gender. That's an interesting thing because more and more, because of believability, you'll often see, for sure in drama, you know, women playing key female roles. When I first started coaching, there was no problem with women doing male and female roles, and very, you know, out of, you know, cultural context, different ethnicities, lots of more variety. It's become a little bit narrower. But if you can give a student a piece, especially beginners and high level, you got a little ground in the middle, that fits with their gender and makes the job a little easier, I would do it. The exception to the rule is, I think in humor, contrasts make for very interesting things. So guys, I feel like I'm a little jealous of this. Guys can often portray women very well in humor, and they're a lot funnier than girls portraying guys in humor. So, you know, giving a guy a girl piece might give you some mileage in humorous. So think a little bit about the gender. Physical characteristics, that's a pretty obvious one, but I have seen people get up and I'm thinking, you're making me work really hard on the I believe you, given what you look like and the piece you're doing. So if the student understands that going in, and you know you have that bright-eyed freshman girl that looks super young, ingenue, that piece might be a humor piece or a drama piece that fits that, just like you have some of these people. I know right now we have a sophomore girl, I swear she looks like a senior and she's so sophisticated looking. She could do those more mature material in general. So think about physical characteristics that will do it. And then finally, their style and capability. So under this, these are the things that I think maybe you don't think about. Sometimes there's material that's super intense subject matter. There are some kids that are really good with that really gritty, intense stuff. Other kids have to have material that's a lot more, I think, easier and not as intense for them. I think a little bit about some of the students we've had, even like Brian Porter with gross indecencies and some more mature subject matters, and he could handle the intensity of that. And you have to think about the subject matter, the maturity of the student to handle it. So I think the question came about steering kids away. Give them that out. You know, this is your novice year. This is your second year. Save that piece for your junior or senior year when you're really ready for it. The capacity for physicalization. Some kids are great at doing character pops is kind of what we call them, although you're not completely popping, but changing. Some kids are great at characters. Those that can do the voice and the body, then I would give them pieces that plays to that strength. But likewise, if that's not a strength, start them out with something that's more of a monologue, something that's going to be able to allow them to not have to work that hard to be believable. So that comes into just a comment here on material, since you guys were talking about prose and poetry versus drama. In this case, we often have the kids read when they come in and you kind of feel, and there are some kids that are so great with language. And we steer those kids into prose and poetry more that has descriptive words that can make the sounds. And then there are those students that can really do voices and or dialogues or that narrative that's going to be a strong dramatic piece. And I always compliment them on this. And it shouldn't be. Sometimes on a team there's hierarchy, like drama's the big kahuna compared to maybe prose reading. I don't know what you have for your prose event, because in NFL you can do prose, poetry, and drama all in the same event. But in our state, there is a separate prose event, there's a separate poetry event, and then there's drama, which is DI as in plays. So you have to say, you know, you are fitting a critical need to be able to use that language because it's beautiful when you say it. And there are kids that are like that. So I would look for that descriptive versus the character capacity.
Okay, a comment. Do you like when I get up?
I expect this fully, so.
Two things, coaches. You have to be careful in the beginning about the kid who will come in and you've got a number of kids to be and they'll treat you as if you are the forensic pharmacist. And they'll tell you what they want. And they really are good. You know, I'd like for you, Mr. Wycoff, can you give me, I want to play a girl, but I also want the girl to be German because I'm taking German classes right now and I have a really good accent. But in addition to that, is it possible that you could also find something where there is a Japanese character too? Because I can do languages really well. And so they'll go through a whole litany as if all you have to do is go to the pharmacy and just pull the lever and out comes the play with all of that in there. And you run around trying to find that for the kid as opposed to saying, well, no, that's not the way that we're going to do this. Just like the kid who would say, I'd like to have a play, Mr. Wycoff, that maybe like has 5 or 6 different characters. Well, you know what? You can do 2 characters when you prove you can do 1. You can do 3 characters when you prove you can do 2, etc. If there is any problem, if you would say, Mr. Wycoff, I'd like to lose in humor or drama. How can I do that? Well, there are 2 things that you should do. Number 1 is when the judge says, I can't understand what's going on. Or number 2, I don't know who's talking. I don't know who's talking and what is going on. And I've got to tell you that there are cuttings, and that's a whole other lecture to do how to put a cutting together, but where I think right from the very beginning, I don't care whether it's humor, drama, or duo, I don't know what is happening. There's someone talking, I don't know who they are. There's an aspect of the plot, I don't know where that came from. So the value of simplicity, coaches, right at the very beginning, is really critical. Well, we're going to, first of all, pick something where the number of characters, and there's nothing wrong with a monologue, you can do, and next of all, it's going to have a simple plot line that everyone is going to understand. After that, you can add, but right off, let's make sure that not only do you not